The clink of crystal glasses and a chorus of laughter floated up from the private dining room of my restaurant. Standing at the top of the stairs, invoices in hand, I froze as Margaret's voice pierced the air, sharp and commanding as ever. "Naturally, I never pay here," she declared with smug confidence. "After all, it's my daughter-in-law Bella's place. Family perks, you know? And between us, I've practically bankrolled half of it anyway, considering all the help we gave them when they were starting out." My grip tightened on the invoices. The sheer audacity of her words was enough to make my blood boil. This restaurant, every brick, every chair, every recipe, was the result of my hard work and sacrifice. 15 years of grueling shifts, endless burn scars, and sleepless nights. Not 1 cent had come from Margaret or her so-called help. "Margaret, darling, you must tell us how you persuaded her to use that marvelous truffle supplier," one of her friends gushed. Margaret let out a self-satisfied chuckle. "Oh, it wasn't difficult. Poor Bella needed so much guidance in the beginning. She still does, really." The paper crumpled in my hand as their laughter grew louder. Another bottle of champagne popped, the finest one on my menu. Of course. My phone buzzed with a message from Ryan, my husband. "Mom mentioned she's hosting some friends at the restaurant tonight. Hope you don't mind." Hope I don't mind? As if his mother's behavior was an afterthought, not the blatant freeloading it truly was. I descended the stairs, my heels striking each step with purposeful precision. Margaret's voice, her exaggerated stories, and the fawning attention of her friends became louder with every step. My heart pounded as I approached the frosted glass door leading to the private dining room. Through the hazy window, I could see the group, Margaret at the head of the table, glass in hand, gesturing dramatically as her audience hung on her every word. "It's fortunate I'm around to ensure the standards here remain high," she was saying. Left to her own devices, well, I'd heard enough. Without hesitation, I pushed the door open. The room fell silent as every head turned toward me. Margaret's perfectly polished smile stayed in place, but her eyes turned cold, sharp like steel. "Bella, dear," she said smoothly, her voice dripping with false warmth, "I was just sharing with everyone about our little restaurant." Our little restaurant. Something inside me snapped. A quiet, final break. Like a thread pulled too tight. "Actually, Margaret," I began, my tone calm but laced with steel, "I think it's time we clarified exactly whose restaurant this is." Later, I slammed the bedroom door so hard that our wedding photo fell from the wall. The glass shattered, and a jagged crack split cleanly between Ryan and me. "Fitting. You're being completely unreasonable," Ryan's voice called through the closed door. "Mom was just trying to be social. She brings valuable connections to the restaurant." I flung the door open, my anger bursting past the threshold. "Valuable connections?" I snapped. "Your mother just cost me $3,000 in food and wine, not to mention the damage she's done to my reputation." Ryan stood in the hallway, wearing the same wrinkled t-shirt he'd been in for days, his shoulders hunched in the way they'd been since he lost his job 3 months ago. "She's just trying to help Bella. You know how influential her friends are in the restaurant industry." "Help," I barked out, a bitter laugh. "By telling her friends she owns half my restaurant? By making it sound like I'm some charity case who can't make decisions without her approval?" "That's not what she meant." "Then what did she mean, Ryan?" I demanded, my voice rising. "Explain to me how your mother undermining me in my own business is supposed to help." Ryan dragged his hands through his hair, an old habit that now only fueled my frustration. "You're taking this way too personally. Mom's proud of what we've built together."
"We."
The word tasted bitter on my tongue. "Tell me, Ryan, what exactly have we built?" I asked, my tone cutting. Because I distinctly remember working endless double shifts, saving every cent, and creating every menu item, while you were sitting comfortably in your corporate job. His expression darkened, his jaw tightening. "That's low, Bella," he said, his voice quiet but tense. "You know I'm doing everything I can to find work." "Are you?" "Because your mother told her friends you're taking a sabbatical to explore new opportunities." Is that what we're calling unemployment now? My voice cut through the tense air like a knife. Stop attacking my mother, Ryan shouted, his fist slamming into the wall. A dent appeared in the drywall, and we both stared at it in stunned silence. The violence of the moment hung between us, like a dark cloud. You know what? I said, grabbing my laptop off the bed. I'm going to the restaurant. I need to clean up the mess your mother made tonight. Bella, wait. And starting tomorrow, your mother pays full price, like everyone else, I continued, cutting him off. If she doesn't like it, she can find somewhere else to hold her court. You can't do that to her, Ryan protested, his voice filled with disbelief. I stopped in the doorway and turned to face him. The man I had spent 12 years building a life with now felt like a complete stranger. Watch me. His face hardened. If you do this, you're choosing business over family. I met his gaze. My voice calm but unyielding.
No, Ryan.
I'm choosing self-respect over manipulation. Maybe you should try it sometime. Without waiting for a response, I walked out, the sharp sound of my heels against the hardwood echoing behind me like a countdown. Sitting in my car, I pulled up the restaurant's security camera feed on my phone. As expected, Margaret's society friends were already posting photos of their complimentary lunch on social media, tagging the restaurant. Each notification felt like another tiny fracture in my crumbling marriage. My phone buzzed with a message from Lisa, my best friend. Wine emergency at my place.
Come now.
For the first time in a long while, the idea of running away didn't feel like weakness. It felt like the sanest decision I could make. Lisa's laptop screen illuminated the kitchen counter as she pulled up Henry's bank statements. My grip on the wine glass tightened as dread coursed through me. Holy, Lisa murmured, scrolling through the transactions. Look at these transfers to Margaret's personal account. They're enormous. And the timing. I leaned in, my chest tightening as I scanned the numbers. Right after Ryan lost his job, she added grimly. And Henry doesn't know. He trusts her completely. I whispered, my voice thick with disbelief. Just like Ryan trusts her, Lisa muttered, highlighting another damning transaction. $200,000 in the last 3 months alone, she said, shaking her head. What could she possibly need that much money for? I asked, my stomach churning. My phone buzzed. Another Instagram notification. Margaret was at a charity gala, decked out in sparkling new jewelry. The caption read, supporting local artists while maintaining standards of excellence. Maintaining standards, I scoffed, showing Lisa the post. She uses that phrase every time she wants to undermine me at the restaurant. Lisa's tone turned serious. Bella, you have to tell Henry. He deserves to know. And ruin my marriage? I asked, my voice cracking. Ryan would never forgive me. Lisa snapped the laptop shut, her expression hardening. Your marriage?
Bella.
Your marriage was over the moment Ryan started defending his mother's lies instead of supporting your truth. The doorbell rang, and Lisa glanced at her phone, groaning. That's probably Mark with the kids. I forgot he's dropping them off early. I should go, I said, trying to steady myself as I set my glass down. I need to check on the restaurant anyway. Lisa grabbed my arm, her eyes piercing into mine. Promise me you'll at least think about telling Henry. This isn't just about you, or the restaurant anymore. Margaret is stealing from her own husband. I'll think about it, I muttered, though my voice lacked conviction. Outside, the cool night air did little to calm my nerves as I fumbled with my car keys. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Ryan. Mom's upset about what you said. We need to talk. I sighed, my stomach twisting into knots. Just then, another notification popped up on my screen, a restaurant review published less than an hour ago. My heart sank when I saw the byline. Oliver Grant, the city's most influential food critic. The review was devastating. While Carter exhibits potential, it falters due to inconsistent standards and a lack of clear direction. Rumors of family interference only add to its troubles. I couldn't bring myself to read any further. My stomach twisted, and Margaret's words echoed mockingly in my mind. Maintaining standards. The timing wasn't a coincidence. She must have known Oliver Grant, the city's most influential food critic, would be dining that night. She orchestrated everything, her ostentatious lunch with her society friends, her thinly veiled performance, to ensure maximum damage. My phone buzzed, and this time it wasn't another review notification. It was Henry. Bella, we need to discuss some concerning bank statements. Can we meet privately? I stared at the message, my heart thudding in my chest. The wine-induced haze was gone, replaced by icy clarity. Margaret had overstepped. This time, she'd gone too far. The choice before me was simple, though no less painful. Protect the feelings of those around me or uncover the truth once and for all. But I couldn't do both. The private booth at Marcello's had an air of quiet tension, the perfect setting for difficult conversations. Henry sat across from me, his usual composed demeanor cracked by the stack of bank statements spread out before him. As he flipped through the pages, his hand trembled slightly. $200,000, he said, his voice low but steady. Over the past 3 months. I stared into the untouched espresso in front of me. My chest felt tight. Henry, I
didn't mean to drag you into this.
I shouldn't have.
No.
His voice sharpened, cutting through my guilt. You did the right thing. But there's more. He slid another document across the table, his expression grim. It was a loan application. My restaurant's name sat at the top, bold and unmistakable. Margaret's signature followed beneath it. And next to hers, my signature. The blood drained from my face. I've never seen this before, I whispered. Henry's gaze darkened. I didn't think you had. She's trying to take out a second mortgage on your restaurant, Henry said, his tone heavy with disappointment. And she's using my name as collateral. The world tilted under my feet. That's impossible. I never signed. Margaret's always been good with signatures, Henry cut in, his smile bitter and edged with irony. Ask Ryan about his college acceptance letter sometime. My phone buzzed again. A text from Ryan. Where are you? Mom's lawyer wants to discuss the restaurant's future direction. Henry leaned over to glance at the message. His expression darkened. She's moving faster than I thought, he muttered. Probably because of this. He pulled out another document, Oliver Grant's scathing review. But this version was different. The harsh family interference comments weren't there. This is the original draft, Henry explained. Oliver's an old friend. He called me this morning, upset that someone had altered his words before publication. The pieces fell into place. Margaret's manipulative social media campaign, the forged loan documents, and now, the tampering with Oliver's review. She's not just trying to control my restaurant, I said, my voice shaking. She's trying to ruin it. Henry nodded solemnly. But why now? I asked, frustration and confusion bubbling to the surface. Because Ryan lost his job, Henry replied, his voice tinged with anger. And Margaret lost access to his corporate accounts. She needs a new source of income to fund her lifestyle. Your restaurant is profitable, visible, and, unfortunately for her, still standing in her way. The word vulnerable echoed in my mind, leaving a bitter taste in its wake. I'm meeting with my lawyer tomorrow, Henry said, his jaw tight. But you need to decide what you're going to do about Ryan. He's been helping her with this. The betrayal hit like a physical blow.
Ryan.
My husband. My partner. The man who once promised to support me through everything.
My phone buzzed again.
This time it was an unknown number. Miss Carter, this is Oliver Grant. We should talk about your mother-in-law's interesting interpretation of my review. Dinner, perhaps? I looked up at Henry, my resolve hardening as I saw my own pain mirrored in his eyes. We were both at the same crossroads. Protect the people we once trusted, or fight for the truth. I need to make some calls, I said, standing with purpose, starting with my lawyer. Henry gave a slow, understanding nod. Some bridges, I realized, are meant to burn. And sometimes the fire lights the path forward. Oliver Grant's office had the cold, calculating air of an interrogation room. He laid out photographs on his desk, Margaret, adorned in lavish jewelry, smiling at various charity events. Your mother-in-law seems to have a taste for luxury, Oliver remarked, pointing to one particular photo. This necklace? Worth more than most people make in a year. Henry's money, I said bitterly. Oliver shook his head. That's where it gets interesting. He turned his screen to reveal a spreadsheet. The timing of these purchases lines up perfectly with your restaurant's busiest nights, the private dining events Margaret hosts. A wave of nausea hit me. Are you saying she sold jewelry at my restaurant? Not just sold, Oliver clarified. She used those events as a front. High-end pieces, cash-only transactions, disguised as wine purchases on your books. I could barely process it. Your husband oversaw the finances for those nights, didn't he? Oliver asked, his tone sharper now. Ryan's words echoed in my mind. Mom's just trying to help. I remembered all the nights he insisted on managing the private room himself, and the wine inventory discrepancies that never seemed to add up. My phone buzzed. A message from Lisa. SOS. Margaret just walked into your restaurant with 2 health inspectors. I have to go, I said, standing abruptly and gathering the photos. Bella, Oliver said, catching my arm. There's more. The jewelry Margaret's been selling? All counterfeits. She's been conning her friends through your restaurant. The final piece clicked into place. This wasn't just laundering money. It was fraud on a grand scale. And Ryan had been complicit. I'm running the story next week, Oliver continued, his voice grave. But you needed to know first. Protect yourself, Bella. My phone buzzed again. This time, a message from Henry. Margaret's drained every account, even Ryan's trust fund. The walls felt like they were closing in. My business, my marriage, my life. It had all been a carefully constructed facade, built on deceit and greed. Margaret wasn't just meddling anymore. She was trying to burn everything down. I need your help, I told Oliver. My voice, steady despite the fury surging through me. But first, I have a call to make. The private dining room felt suffocating, every inch of it charged with tension. Margaret sat at the head of the table, draped in yet another piece of her counterfeit jewelry, her demeanor as imperious as ever. Ryan loomed nearby, his presence almost protective. The absence of Henry was glaring, a silent accusation in itself. Margaret picked up the stack of documents I had placed before her, her expression a mix of boredom and irritation. Really, Bella? She said with a dismissive sigh. All this fuss over a few harmless business arrangements. Business arrangements? My tone was sharp. Is that what we're calling fraud now? Ryan took a step forward, his hands raised as though trying to mediate. Bella, you're blowing this out of proportion. Mom was only trying to sell fake jewelry using my restaurant. I interrupted, pulling out my phone. With one tap, Margaret's voice filled the room. Of course, it's authentic, darling. And such a bargain through my private collection. Margaret's perfectly composed exterior cracked. Her hands gripped the table as her nails dug into the polished wood. Where did you get that? She demanded, her voice tight. Your clients aren't happy, Margaret, I said coolly. Especially the ones who discovered their investments were worthless. You ungrateful little, she spat. But the dining room door swung open before she could finish. Henry stepped inside, flanked by 2 uniformed police officers. Henry, Margaret's voice turned shrill. What is this? What are you doing here? Doing my job, Henry replied, his tone calm but resolute. As a member of this restaurant's board of directors. Ryan's face turned ashen. What's going on? What's going on, Henry said, fixing his son with a piercing glare, is that your mother is under investigation for fraud. And so are you. Margaret straightened in her chair, her mask of composure slipping into rage. You have no proof, she snapped, though her trembling hands betrayed her fear. Actually, a familiar voice chimed in. We have plenty. Oliver Grant stepped into the room, holding a recorder and a file of damning evidence. Margaret's carefully constructed world began to crumble. Her wine glass shattered as it hit the wall, and she lunged toward me, her voice shrill with desperation. You planned this, she screamed. You conniving little. Mom, stop. Ryan shouted, grabbing her arm to hold her back. I crossed my arms, meeting Ryan's panicked eyes with unflinching resolve. What's the matter, Ryan? Finally finding your voice now that everything's falling apart. Bella, I didn't know, he stammered,
his voice shaking.
Liar, I said coldly. I saw the forged invoices, the altered books, the missing funds. You knew exactly what was happening, and you helped her. The police officers moved forward as Margaret dissolved into a storm of rage and denial. This is your fault, she shrieked, lunging one last time. Her hand swiped at the table, scattering evidence across the floor, photos, bank statements, and records of her fraudulent schemes. Henry's voice cut through the chaos, low but heavy with betrayal. I trusted both of you. As the officers escorted Margaret out, Ryan turned to me, his voice trembling. Bella, please. I can explain. I stepped back, letting the weight of his actions sink in. Explain what? The lies? The forgery? Or how you let her drag my name and my restaurant through the mud? My phone buzzed in my hand. A news alert popped onto the screen, and my stomach dropped as I read the headline. Socialite Margaret Thompson faces fraud allegations. Local restaurant at center of scandal. My restaurant's name blazed across every major outlet, now tied to Margaret's downfall. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to take a steady breath. This wasn't the end for me. It was just the beginning of the fight to reclaim everything she had tried to take. The courthouse hallways stretched endlessly before me, each step feeling heavier than the last. Clusters of Margaret's former friends loitered near the courtroom doors, their whispers barely concealed behind expensive handbags. Their expressions, mixtures of betrayal and fury, told the story of women who had realized their glittering jewelry was as fake as Margaret's carefully curated image. Are you ready? Oliver's steadying hand on my elbow broke through my swirling thoughts. Before I could answer, Ryan appeared, his face pale and drawn, the weight of our crumbled life etched into every line. Bella, please, he said softly, desperation lacing his tone. Don't go through with this. I stared at him, my resolve unshaken. Don't do what, Ryan? Tell the truth. She's my mother, he whispered, his voice cracking under the strain. And I was your wife. The past tense rolled off my tongue with a painful finality. It didn't stop either of you from destroying everything I built. The courtroom doors swung open, revealing Margaret seated at the defendant's table. Her posture was impeccable, a stark contrast to the unflattering prison jumpsuit she now wore. Her sharp gaze met mine, and for a moment, the cold calculation in her eyes was unnerving. As I took the witness stand, her voice sliced through the silence. Last chance, Bella, she said, her tone dripping with venom. Family should protect family. I tilted my head unfazed. Like you protected Henry's money? Or Ryan's future? The crack in her facade was brief, but satisfying. I gave Ryan purpose when you made him feel worthless, she hissed, her composure slipping further with each word. You made him an accomplice. I made him loyal. Her voice echoed through the room. A twisted justification for years of manipulation. Loyalty, I echoed, pulling out my phone. With deliberate precision, I played the recording I'd been saving for this very moment. Margaret's voice rang out, clear and damning. Ryan's pathetic, really. So desperate for Mommy's approval, he'll sign anything, just like his father. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Ryan's face turned ghostly pale, and Margaret lunged forward, her lawyer barely restraining her. That's not true. I never, she began. But her sputtering denial only emphasized the truth of her words. Oliver rose from his seat, his tone calm but commanding. Your Honor, I'd like to submit additional recordings documenting Mrs. Thompson's systematic manipulation of her son and her victims. Margaret's composure shattered entirely. You're ruining everything, she screamed, her voice rising to a fever pitch. All my work, my reputation. Your reputation? A voice rang out from the gallery. One of her former friends, her face flushed with anger, stood abruptly. What about our reputations? Our money? The weight of Margaret's lies bore down on her like a collapsing house of cards. As she sank back into her seat, defeated and exposed, I turned my gaze to Ryan. He stared at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. It was over. The truth at last had its day. The courtroom descended into chaos. Margaret's outburst had shattered any semblance of composure, and the once hushed gallery erupted into murmurs and gasps. Amid the noise, my eyes drifted to Ryan, my husband of 12 years, who now looked like a man seeing the truth for the very first time. "I'm sorry," he mouthed silently, but the apology wasn't for Margaret.
It was for me.
The judge's gavel slammed down with an echo that silenced the room like a thunderclap.
Order.
"Mrs. Thompson, control yourself, or I will have you removed." But Margaret wasn't done. Her face contorted with rage as she broke free of her lawyer's grasp, charging toward me with wild eyes. "You ungrateful little," she spat, her venomous words hanging in the air like a storm cloud. "I should have destroyed you when—" Before she could finish, Henry stepped in front of her, his presence commanding and steady. "Enough, Margaret," he said, his voice calm but resolute. The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Margaret stumbled back into her chair, defeated not by force, but by the quiet finality in Henry's tone. The judge looked down from the bench, his voice softer now. "Mr. Thompson, would you like to make your statement?" Henry straightened his tie and stepped forward, his composure unshaken despite the drama that had just unfolded. He stood tall, embodying the dignity that Margaret had long abandoned. "Yes, Your Honor," he began, his voice measured. "First, I want to extend my sincerest apologies to my daughter-in-law, to our friends, and to everyone my wife manipulated. That includes our son." The weight of his words hung in the air as the gallery exchanged glances. Margaret sat frozen, her face a mask of shock as the truth she had fought so hard to suppress was laid bare. Henry continued, turning slightly to meet my gaze. "Bella built something extraordinary, and we, Margaret and I, failed to support her. Instead, we allowed greed, manipulation, and arrogance to tarnish what should have been a celebration of her success." Margaret crumpled further into her chair, her defeat palpable. This wasn't vengeance or petty retribution. This was justice. Justice served by the one person whose loyalty she had taken for granted. Sometimes, karma doesn't need help. It just needs witnesses. The last box of Margaret's belongings sat untouched in my office. Outside the restaurant window, the morning delivery trucks rolled in, their steady rhythm signaling the start of another day.
My day.
My restaurant. Oliver stood nearby, fiddling with his tie, looking more nervous than he had during the entire ordeal. "Almost finished?" he asked, his voice hesitant. "Just one final task," I replied. I carried the box outside, the dumpster waiting like an open invitation. Inside the box, Margaret's once prized fake jewelry caught the light. It sparkled dull and hollow, just like the lies she had built her schemes upon. "You're really throwing it all out?" Oliver asked. "What would I keep it for? As a souvenir of betrayal?" With a firm motion, I let the box drop. The clatter as it hit the bottom was unexpectedly satisfying. I'd rather build something meaningful than hold on to this. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling my attention. Ryan's divorce lawyer had sent an update about the final paperwork. Below that, a message from Henry about the upcoming board meeting for the restaurant. Each notification was a reminder that life was moving forward, step by step, one decision at a time. Oliver cleared his throat, drawing my focus back to him. "Speaking of building something, my latest review goes live tomorrow." "Already?" My heartbeat quickened. He handed me a printed copy. I had to be fair, but I couldn't ignore the truth. My eyes landed on the headline, bold and clear. "Rising from the ashes, how betrayal strengthened the heart of the kitchen." It wasn't just a review. It was a testament to resilience, growth, and moving forward. Oliver cleared his throat, his voice pulling me back to the present. "Should I keep going?" he asked, holding the review with a mix of pride and hesitation. My eyes skimmed the final paragraph again. savoring its words like the finish of a well-balanced dish. In the end, Carter's greatest achievement isn't its innovative menu or impeccable service, it's the proof that integrity, like the finest recipes, requires both heat and patience to perfect. In exposing deception, owner Bella Carter didn't just save her restaurant, she redefined its core identity. Every dish now carries a simple promise: what you see is what you get. In today's world of carefully curated facades, such honesty tastes revolutionary. I set the paper down, a faint smile tugging at my lips. Too much? Oliver asked, shifting uncomfortably. Before I could answer, the kitchen door swung open and my head chef poked his head out.
Chef.
The new menu tasting. You coming? I turned to Oliver, the review momentarily forgotten. Stay for breakfast, I offered, slipping into the rhythm of the day. I'm trying something new. Always, he said with a smile that carried understanding. Oliver had shared bits of his own story during the trial, his family's betrayals, and how they'd driven him to seek truth. Not just in food, but in life itself. It made him more than just a critic. He was someone who understood the weight of rebuilding after destruction. The kitchen welcomed me with its controlled chaos. Steam rising, pans clattering, voices shouting out prep times. This was my sanctuary, no lies, no facades, just honest work and the promise of something genuine at the end of it. Chef. My sous chef held up a plate, the food carefully arranged like an edible piece of art. Ready when you are. I tied my apron, the familiar weight grounding me in the present. Some people collect scars. Others collect revenge.
But me?
I collect moments like these, creating something real in a world of fake jewelry and empty promises. I stepped up to the counter, eyeing the plate with a critical but hopeful gaze. Let's cook.